The Atlantic slave trade is the transportation by slave traders of enslaved African people, mainly to the Americas. This trade used the Middle Passage and the Triangular Trade Route. This trade occurred during the 19th century and the 16th century.
And his crew needed the Africans for slavery because they could provide the labor and they knew nothing of the land. African slaves could fight off European diseases much easier because of their previous encounters. The Native Americans couldn't handle the diseases that the Europeans brought over, which meant that they were more susceptible and died from them more frequently. The Africans also had experience in agricultural, meaning they were better laborers than the Native Americans. Even their skin was a reason for their capture. Their dark skin tones allowed them to handle heat and fatigue better than the Native Americans. Lastly, their ignorance and fear allowed the Europeans to take advantage of the slaves in their situations. Oftentimes, the slaves were terrified of escaping because they didn't know the land and they were even more scared about what would happen if they got caught. The traders were actively exploring the regions of Africa to find willing African kings to trade goods for slaves. Since they didn't speak the same language, communication was difficult. The most common goods were the advanced guns. The kings used these guns to defend their kingdoms and attack their adversaries. Over time, the trading slaves and guns equipped most kingdoms of Africans with guns, making the demand for guns large in Africa, and all they needed to do to pay for these weapons were slaves.
I need some slaves. Slaves for guns.
Captains of the slave trade traded to multiple kings, which gave them more slaves than it would trading with a singular king. They always brought back the slaves to the ship where a group of the crew was waiting. They stowed the slaves in the cargo bay where they would suffer from the festering and overcrowded space. The captain then sets its course toward the New World and its colonies.
Got some slaves. Set a course for America.
The cargo bay was a dreadful place to be. It was essentially a festering pool of disease and death. The Africans that were there were cramped and sick. At least 2 million Africans, 10 to 15%, died during the infamous Middle Passage across the Atlantic. Another 15 to 30% died during the march to or confinement along the coast. Altogether, for every 100 slaves who reached the New World, another 40 had died in Africa or during the Middle Passage. Even though it didn't seem like it, the Europeans saw the Africans as precious cargo. They oftentimes took the Africans to the top of the deck and poked and prodded at the Africans, making them dance and shuffle to ensure their athletic physique. But it was mainly to just keep their cargo alive. When they died, however, the Europeans gladly threw them off the boat, and in some instances they hadn't. They threw live Africans into the sea, for example.
Y'all better be healthy down there. Get up here. We've arrived. Wake up, Negroes. It's time to go.
Ah!